All right, so we're going to go over fasting again. So we'll run through this real quick. So the big thing is that when the reason we spent so much time last week talking about glycemic function and fat oxidizing state and ketosis is because it's the basis for everything we're going to be talking about. A lot of the things we're going to be talking about as we talk about the supplements I take and how I've lost so much fat and how I've built so much muscle at the same time is based off of the fat oxidizing state. So that's why we spent some time on it. That's why everything we're going to be talking about later, if you're like, well, that doesn't work. It works in the fat oxidizing system. That's the whole point of what we're talking to do. If you're going to try to find the one thing that's going to be the biggest benefit to your body, the biggest benefit to your health, learn glycemic function. Like I said, the way that I do fat oxidizing state and ketosis, it fixes diabetes. And you know, if you're trying to make the argument that, well, ketosis isn't healthy, yeah, it's if you're going to make that argument, then we have to argue against what's going on in a sugar-based system, and that causes diabetes, it causes inflammation, it causes all sorts of problems, it causes type 3 diabetes, which is Alzheimer's. It leads into all sorts of issues with ATP production for the brain, for the heart. It's terrible. But that's the way we're using it because people don't understand glycemic function. The guy who did Blue Zones, I thought he did a pretty good job documenting just the idea that these people live longer. Maybe there's something about their diet and function that we should look into. And one of the big things they found in diet was that a lot of the people who were living longer were eating a very low glycemic function. The reason for that is because it's just the way the sugar system works. If you drip small amounts of glucose into the system at a time, it works great and you can run on it and everything's peachy keen. But if you give giant amounts of it, it shoves all of it out of the blood into as much of the muscles goes in there, which is not a lot. The rest of it goes to fat. So it's making us fat, it's creating inflammation, but then that's where we have that crash. So that's the issue. Now, when we talk about fasting, there's a couple of different things that you have to recognize. One, I do this a lot differently than everybody else, and this is going to create a firestorm, and everybody's going to be pissy, and that's great. That's fantastic. Let's have that conversation. But the reason why people are trying to, if you look at the way that our body uses energy, uses ATP, that's why Ozempic and those are hurting so many people. So what happens is if you have a little bit of sugar throughout the day, your body stays in a sugar-fed state. And when it's in a sugar-fed state, it will look for sugar. If you don't give it enough, it will make its own through what's called gluconeogenesis. And I keep getting told that I'm not supposed to use the big words, but I'm just going to assume that you guys are smarter than everybody else is, or that you have the ability to Google things. So when we look at the glucose-fed state in a fasting state, what ends up happening is that your body, like I said, wants to stay in that glucose-fed state. So what ends up happening is that it rips apart your muscle tissue to get the amino acids to make sugar out of. So the way your body makes sugar is that your liver uses alanine, malate, glycinate, those sort of things, to those amino acids to produce new sugar. And your body has to do this all the time. By the way, this is also something that you have to understand if you're going to be in ketosis or in a fat oxidizing state, because your doctors don't know this. So what ends up happening is that when you go in on blood work, if you're in a ketosis or if you're in a fat oxidizing state, what you're going to end up seeing is that your sugars in the morning are a little high. It's called the dawn effect. You're not diabetic. Your body is making more sugar for your blood. Everything in your body can run off of either ketones or off of fat, except for your blood, because your blood has no mitochondria. So what ends up happening is you have to make sugar for your blood as the day goes through. Now in the morning, it's oftentimes a little bit higher. So you'll see it 105, 120, somewhere in there, depending on the person. You're not diabetic, you're okay. Pull your insulin, and if your insulin's high, we have a totally different conversation that probably you and I should have, but that's what's going on. So watch your sugars, but if they're high and you're in ketosis, that's fine. I try to keep mine a little bit high. I take extra collagen, so because I don't want to be in ketosis. Like I'm in a fat oxidizing state, but I don't want to be in ketosis, because when you're in ketosis, your breath smells bad. Not a huge deal. Chew some gum if you want to be in ketosis, fine. I take extra collagen, so that's how I avoid it. Now, as we go through everything, I'm going to be talking about the supplements I'm taking. Now, big thing on this, they're going to be more than you need. One, I'm 230 pounds. I'm less than 10% body fat, so I need a giant amount to begin with. I also am working out really hard. I'm training for something, so I need a little bit extra. I live on what I call 125% rule. We'll get into that later. But the other thing is that I see sick people every day. I see people who have COVID. I see people who have the flu. I see people who have sinus infections, bronchitis. I work with lots of bad issues like MS and immunocompromised people who have Lyme's and chronic fatigue, and fibromyalgia, and all that type of stuff. So I'm seeing this. I'm around people who are breathing on me every day who are sick. So I take extra things because I don't want to get sick. So that's the other piece of what I'm taking. So as we go through what I'm taking, I'll tell you guys how much and what, but understand it's more than 99% of you guys need. So that's one of those things. Now, when we talk about fasting, I run, at the current moment, I'm running a 47-1, which means I eat once every 2 days. What I'm eating is I'm eating 2 pretty decent sized pizzas, blueberry cheesecake, and pecan pie. And they're all keto. And to do this, the reason I'm doing this is to prove a point. So, is because you can eat all these things in a proper schedule, mixed with everything, all the chemistry, the reason I'm doing it, and it still works. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. But there's a lot of things that you guys can eat in a fasting state that work out really, really well. So my normal, when I'm not trying to cut for what I'm doing, I run a 23-1, which is where you eat once a day. It's not hard to get to. It works out really, really well. I'm never hungry, but we can work on hunger issues with people differently depending on what their hunger issues are. But here's the thing. So you cannot fast out of a glucose-fed state. So the idea that, well, I'll just go, I'm eating my normal diet, but I'm just going to fast for, 18 hours. Horrible, terrible idea. Your body's going to rip apart your muscle tissue because as it goes through that gluconeogenesis process, making sugar for the blood and everything else. And if you're in a glucose-fed state, your body's going to try to feed your muscles, your brain, everything off the glucose it makes from your muscles. So that's why when we see Ozempic people where 50% of the weight they lost was from their lean muscle mass, that's why. Because they need a little bit of glucose throughout the day, maintaining themselves in a glycemic, a sugar-fed state, but they're eating too little of it, so the body has to rip apart their muscle tissues because their doctors believe in the calorie system. That's why they're being hurt. They don't understand the chemistry of how the body works. They believe in calories. And again, Western medicine using the drugs they don't understand to do things that they don't understand, and now it's hurting people. So that's the problem I get into. If you guys are in a fat oxidizing state and you want to use semaglutide, you can. I use it all the time, phenomenal results. But you've got to be you cannot be in a glucose-fed state. You have to be in a fat oxidizing state first. So get into ketosis or FOS, then start fasting. The other piece of the fasting that I'm going to catch a lot of hell on is I don't think that you should fast without taking supplementation. So I get it. If you're in a fat oxidizing state first, which again, get into ketosis, get into a fat oxidizing state, then start subtracting your meals, start fasting after that. The big thing is that, so I get it. Like if you're in a fat oxidizing state, you have to produce ATP. You're getting your ATP from the fat you're burning. Fantastic. Love this system. Where are you getting your CoQ10, your methylated B vitamins, your omega-3 fatty acids? Where are you getting, all the amino acids your body needs to rebuild muscle tissue and everything else? You're not. If you don't put it in the chemical entryway, it's not in the chemical system. So you need to fast. You need your methylated B vitamins to do everything. You don't store those very well. You need your amino acids to actually rebuild and regenerate tissue. You don't store those very well. So that's the thing. And so when you look at man, you're supplementing with a lot of stuff. Yeah, I need lots of chemicals. I need lots of chemistry to make this thing work. And so do you. So that's kind of the big piece. We've got to make sure we get all that stuff in. That's why we go through all the supplementation. That's why we do all this stuff. So as you start understanding that, you'll start kind of getting the cleaner picture. And I know people are like, "Oh, you're not supposed to supplement. If you supplement, you're not really fasting." I would disagree with you. Chemistry would disagree with you. But do it however you want to do it. I'm just telling you from what I've seen chemically and what I've seen logically, this is the way to go. And I'm using my body as I'm telling you this works. It works. So that's what's going on. Like I said, we're going to go through all the chemistry and everything else we've got. That should be pretty simple as we go on. But again, if you're going to have one takeaway from this, learn glycemic function. Even if you're not getting ketosis, it'll help you with everything you're doing. You'll start to understand, oh, I shouldn't eat this food. And if I do eat this food, I can add in cinnamon or fiber or whatever to decrease the speed at which it turns into sugars, that type of thing. As you learn glycemic function, we'll go over some of that as well. But just Google it and start looking at glycemic function, looking at ketotic state, looking at how your body uses the glycemic index, the glycemic load, like those sort of things. That'll give you lots of great information. Like this is why everyone's talking about, oh, eat your rice and oatmeal. And I'm a giant, advocate about not eating rice and oatmeal because the glycemic index is so high. If you look at it from a glycemic standard, white rice is worse for you than a can of Coca-Cola. So that kind of adds it. One of the worst possible things you can put in your body that's deemed a health food is granola. It's oats covered in sugar. Like you made a sugary thing worse. So yeah, granola is probably the worst possible thing you can feed your kids or yourself, and it's marketed as a health food. And again, I hate to tell you this, but mainstream knowledge, the media, your doctors, they're either wrong or they're lying to you about what's healthy. Because there isn't a cereal on the shelf that's healthy for you. There's some argument to be made for some of the keto stuff, but man, if it's normal stuff, it's killing you. So get off of that. We're going to go into a little bit more depth of how we do everything, but when you're fasting, it's pretty simple. You're just not eating. If you get into a fat oxidizing state first for a couple of days, then you start subtracting things off. It works really well. The way I usually walk people through it is we go 3 or 4 days in a ketotic or fat oxidizing state, where basically they're eating no sugars, they're eating no carbs. We're walking through this. And then I'm just like, skip breakfast. Like, all right, cool. And they kind of get used to that. And if they get used to that for a couple of days, we'll have them skip lunch. As they get used to that, then we have them just eat dinner. This only works in a fat oxidizing state. And the reason it only works in a fat oxidizing state is because you never run out of fat. Your body always has access to energy. When you're in a glucose fed state and you consume sugar, your body uses the sugar, and then when it runs out, your body goes, oh crap, and has to start tearing apart your muscle tissue. Well, remember where your mitochondria live? They live in the muscle tissue. If we're trying to create ATP and we lose muscle, we're going way backwards on where we're trying to go health-wise. So if you're going to start fasting, if you're going to use semaglutide, get into a fat oxidizing state first, then stop eating, because your body still needs ATP. But if you're in a fat oxidizing state, your body goes, cool, we're burning fat now. And if you stop eating, your body goes, oh, look at all the fat I have to pull off the body and burn, and fat for fat. Now we're healthy. But you still have to supplement in with the chemicals that you guys need. So like I said, the rest of this week, we'll go through the supplementation, stuff like that. On Fridays, we're going to be answering questions. I've already got a list of questions. We'll go to kind of a recap. We'll answer some questions and stuff like that. But I'll see you guys throughout the week. Thanks. Sorry about not having any sound earlier.